When corporate titan Henry Whitmore loses everything, he discovers true wealth in the unlikeliest place, a community garden tended by a fiery widow who sees past his failures. Henry Whitmore stood in the empty penthouse, his Gucci loafer sinking into plush carpet that would belong to someone else by morning. At 68, he'd been forced into retirement after the board discovered accounting irregularities not his doing. But the CEO always falls first. His wife of 40 years had taken the Aspen house and the yacht. Now his phone buzzed with texts from children who only called when needing tuition payments. Rain streaked the floor-to-ceiling windows as Henry shuffled to the community garden across the street. The only place his keyboard still worked. He collapsed onto a weathered bench, his $3,000 suit soaked through. That's where furry-haired Maggie O'Leary found him, the 72-year-old widow who ran the garden with military precision. "You look like my tomatoes after frost," she loped, thrusting a steaming thermos into his hands. "Drink this before you drown in self-pity." The spicy chai burned his throat in the best way. As twilight fell, Maggie pruned roses with shears that had seen better days. "Know why I worked this plot?" she asked. "My Frank died planting these damn flowers. Now they bloom every spring." Stubborn as he was, she stabbed the dirt. "Life keeps going, Mr. Fancy Shoes. You just decide whether to grow weeds or roses." Henry's phone buzzed, another withdrawal alert. He silenced it and reached for a trowel. "Show me how to plant something that lasts." Maggie's laugh lines crinkled. "Start by getting those expensive pants dirty." For the first time in months, Henry smiled. Weeks passed, and Henry became a garden regular. His Rolex sat forgotten in a drawer as he learned to distinguish basil from weeds under Maggie's sharp eye. She taught him to feel soil quality not with your eyes, city boy, with your soul, and shared sandwiches from a faded lunchbox. One humid afternoon, Henry unearthed a rusted locket beneath the peonies. Maggie froze. "Frank gave me that," she whispered. "Lost it years ago." Her calloused fingers trembled, opening it to reveal a photo of young Frank holding their stillborn daughter. Henry's corporate instincts failed him. Instead of platitudes, he simply held her weathered hand as tears dripped onto his mud-acked shoes. They sat until fireflies appeared, Maggie humming an Irish lullaby Henry vaguely remembered his nanny singing. The next morning, Henry arrived with 2 surprises: properly worn gardening gloves and blueprints. "I've been studying community garden funding," he said. "We could triple your growing space at accessible beds." Maggie eyed him. "Why?" "Because," Henry swallowed his pride, "this place saved me. I wanted to save others." Maggie wiped her eyes with a dirty sleeve. First lesson in real life. Hank always led with the truth. She grabbed a shovel. "Now help me move these compost bins before you faint from the smell." As they worked, Henry realized he hadn't checked his stocks once that day. The garden's grand reopening made the evening news. Former CEO transforms eyesore into urban oasis. Cameras flashed as Henry cut the ribbon, but his eyes sought Maggie's proud nod. Afterward, a reporter cornered her. "Ms. O'Leary, how does a retired teacher afford these improvements?" Henry froze mid-handshake. "Teacher?" Maggie's secret unraveled fast. She'd never owned the garden, just volunteered there since Frank's death. The land belonged to developers, who planned to break ground next month. "You lied." Henry's voice cracked in his squarely used kitchen that night. Maggie stood defiant in her muddy overalls. "You assumed. Big difference." His marble counters mocked him. "I invested 200 in people, not dirt." Maggie slammed her jar of homemade jam. "Did you see Mrs. Chen today? First time out since her stroke." "Our Jamal, that boy stopped dealing drugs to 10 peppers." Henry's phone buzzed. His lawyer. The board had cleared his name. He could sue for reinstatement. Maggie read his face. "Going back to your golden cage." She left without her signature sun hat. At 3 a.m., Henry found it hanging on his doorknob with a note: "Forgot how much gardenias smell like regret." He buried his face in the brim, breathing in soil and her rosewater perfume. Henry spent days drafting legal motions to save the garden, his old skills surging back. But at the zoning meeting, Maggie wasn't there. "She's at the hospital," whispered Mrs. Chen. "Collapse moving planters." Henry found Maggie in a gown, swallowing her frail frame, monitors beeping. "Idiot doctor says my heart's tired," she rasped. "Tell him hearts aren't meant to be idle." Her hand felt so small in his. "Why didn't you say you were sick?" "You weren't listening." She turned to the window. "You egos only hear dollar signs." The machines hissed. Henry thought of boardrooms where lives were balance sheets. "Teach me to listen properly." Maggie's medicine took effect as dawn painted her white hair pink. Henry stayed, memorizing the cadence of her breaths. When she woke, he had a proposal, not legal papers, but a handwritten list. 1. Sell penthouse. 2. Buy garden land. 3. Build Maggie a proper toolshed. "You're mad," she croaked. "Artificable," Henry agreed, kissing her forehead. "But for once, I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty." Outside, interns waited with merger contracts. Henry sent them away with boxes of Maggie's famous zucchini bread. 1 year later, the Colliery Whitmore community garden thrived with raised beds and a greenhouse. Henry, now sporting Maggie's late husband's frayed flannel, taught finance classes at the senior center while she bossed volunteers with renewed vigor. On their joint birthday they discovered they shared the date. Maggie led Henry to Frank's original rosebush. He proposed here, she said, tucking a bloom behind Henry's ear. Took him 3 tries to get the question out. Henry knelt in the rich soil, his bad knee protesting. Maggie May leery. Will you? Yes, you old fool. She yanked him up for a kiss as cameras clicked. The press loved their story. At sunset they sat on their bench watching kids harvest tomatoes. Maggie rested her head on Henry's shoulder. Who'd have thought? Henry smiled, dirt under his nails and love in his chest. Funny where life plants us. Maggie squeezed his hand. Funnier where we choose to grow. The garden sign swayed in the breeze, its motto etched beneath their names: bloom where you're planted. Nearby, Henry's abandoned briefcase made an excellent planter for strawberries.